YouTube world. My name's Alistair Larmour, and I'm lucky enough to be chatting with Pamela Aaralyn this morning. Do you want to say hi?
Hello, I'm Pamela Aaralyn. It's wonderful to meet you, and thank you for having me. When you first reached out to me, you really got my attention because you were studying and channeling the aspects and all the aspects thereof of the embodiment of time, capital T. And I remember when management called me in and said, you might want to check this email. and I couldn't stop reading, and it's been fascinating since then.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for the compliment. But yeah, like I've been playing around in the mystic realm for years and years and years. And one of the things that I found at the heart of Buddhism, and also it's critical to the Mayan calendar religious sect or wherever they are, is time. And it's one of those things that everybody knows that time exists, but if you ask them how it works or what it does or what its purpose is or any of that, it's a total mystery. Right, the amount of information floating around out there is really short. Yeah, and what I find is that half of the time when you're doing investigations like this is it's just as important to get the question right as it is to try and answer it. And so I figure if we throw a whole bunch of original ideas at time and then we might get something really useful for us and all of our viewers. And I just couldn't imagine anyone better to talk to than you because of the amount of channeling that you do and the amount of investigation you do with all sorts of beings that float around the multiverse. Your work really stands out in this field.
Thank you. Well, I hear that you do quite an amount of channeling yourself of some amazing beings, and that my team says it's amazing, and I've got a hold of some of it, and I agree. And I am just absolutely astounded by the aspect of times that come through when I do channel them. Many of my aspects relate to that, relate to the process of birth, death, and everything in between, the cycles of life and death and regeneration. And a lot of my dominant guides, you know, from the spiritual world, have a great amount to do and to say in regards to time, capital T, versus time in this third dimensional reality. And I really like to share with people that time in third dimensional realities is a bit of a holograph. It's something that is completely bendable to our own creation, and quite frankly in other dimensions doesn't exist. So and when I say doesn't exist, I don't mean doesn't exist at all, but what I do mean is it doesn't exist in a way that we can conjure and wrap our entire human brains around. You know what I mean? Like before and after.
It's, yeah, absolutely. Like it's yeah, and I have to agree with you wholeheartedly about time being in 3D predominantly, although he has a minor presence in other dimensions. His being is focused in 3D, even though he's one of these rare creatures who has no physical representation. Mm-hmm. It's you know, like, so when you say it's hard to get your head around it, like I'm still a little bit boggled, but that's how we get started with these things, you know.
Yes.
So I thought the process we might go through is to, if I channel time, and because you've got such a wealth of experience in, well, all things metaphysical, that you would have we would all learn a lot if you were to have a conversation with time. Yeah. And
Would you like for me to have a conversation with time as you channel him?
yeah, absolutely. An interview, a
Okay.
face-to-face, and see what happens. Like, it's well, look, it keeps the conversation dynamic, and it means that you can also direct what sort of things he talks about rather than him. But I'll dive right in and see where it goes. Yeah. Hello.
What a fancy greeting. Would you define yourself as father time, mother time? How would you care to define, if at all?
I don't feel like Papa Bear, Mama Bear, or I feel more like Baby Bear than any of the other bears.
Baby.
I don't feel, no, I don't feel like mother time or father time. I don't feel particularly to either gender, if that answers your question.
Would you define yourself as a being at all that holds any physical incarnated aspects?
The strange thing is that there are statues devoted to me in the form of Kronos, but I don't feel I'm in them. I'm not there. No, no, I wouldn't say I'm physical in the way that you define physical.
So you don't incarnate?
No, I am yet to take a human form, and it's not on my agenda. It's not something I'm interested in doing.
Would you define yourself as a part of the totality and the whole of what humans call source or God?
I was positioned here by Source. My coming here is part of an agreement with Source or the singularity, and my purpose is almost unique. No, it's unique. I am the only one of my kind in this reality.
And when you define this reality, do you mean this universe?
Yes, this universe. I'm expressed slightly differently in other locations, but yes, this universe.
Is there a significant difference in the way that you are expressed in this universe overall, as opposed to the way that you are expressed in third dimensional realities such as Earth?
Could you elaborate on that question for me, please?
For example, when humans come to me as a channel, I am a channel of many beings who have purposes involving time. Most of my aspects have life purposes overall and individually involving awareness and time. Therefore, people ask me this question: does time exist?
Well, I exist, I'm real. I consider myself a condition of 3D. I consider myself to be one of the baseline rules of 3D reality.
Would you consider yourself a part of the universal laws of our reality, or otherwise what we would call the sacred laws?
No, I'm an imposed variable on the 3D, if that helps. Like the sacred laws, like the laws of the universe, are immutable. However, I am mutable.
Imposed by whom?
By the singularity.
But
Before I came to this reality, we made an agreement that I would take on this unique role. And I was fashioned to serve this purpose.
But you operate differently in different dimensional components in different places.
Yes, absolutely.
So what I'm trying to ask here is, have you noticed the imposition of how humans are defining time in contrast with what you truly represent overall?
So how humans view me does not necessarily, the question you're asking is, do humans see me as I actually am?
Right.
And the answer is not even close, not even close.
Thank you. And can you please expand upon those differences?
The first one is that I am much more elastic than humans give me credit for. Like, as far as human culture understands, that at 1 minute per minute. And that's not true. Like, the people experience time at different speeds, at different paces. And, you know, depending on the circumstance, depending on where you are, how you're living, what you're doing at the time, when you're in intense flow, when you're really expressing something, when a human is tapping into high dimensions and really deeply in flow in something really joyous and amazing, time slows down for the individual and they experience a much shorter, how do I put it, like they may spend 3 hours doing this, it will feel like 15 minutes, and both are true. Both of them are perfectly normal and real. The subjective view of the outsider having that pastime take 3 hours is very normal, as is the doer feeling that 15 minutes has passed, also perfectly normal. And so for humans to accept or conceive of me as constant is ridiculous. It's not what happens at all. And that would be the primary way that humans misperceive me.
Okay. So you're saying that because time is existing, and please correct me if I'm imposing my own definitions of how I'm understanding you, but what I'm hearing is that you are existing in all realities at once, simultaneously, but based upon how you are utilizing each reality, that the aspect of an event could occur in a millisecond or 100,000 years, and that could all be the same?
Yes. Yes, to a mountain. To a mountain, time is incredibly different to how it is for a human. And so, although just as a mosquito lives for, 2 days, they still feel as though they've expressed a full and complete life. They still feel as though the time that they've been here was more than enough. But for a mountain, for a human, that 2 days is impossible. Absolutely unimaginable to have as a lifetime, just as a mountain experiences their lifetime over eons. And the way that they relate to me is all the same. The way that your chronological time is incredibly different, but the experience for each of those three individuals is almost the same. How they relate to me is almost the same.
Thank you. What many of my friends, families, and clients around the world are expressing to me is why the need for time to be qualified with suffering. Where does suffering come in from your standpoint?
I'm quite abstract from suffering. I'm not involved in the content of experience. So I'm not part of that creation. That's not my job, as to go say what or why.
Therefore,
what or why any emotion is expressed, be it suffering or joy. It's really out of my hands, that one.
okay, so you feel uniquely that it is not a part of your aligned contract to cause suffering.
Absolutely not. No, but I create a platform for people for beings to experience, for people to have all sorts of emotions, be they pleasant or unpleasant to the person having them.
Well, then can I surmise that what you could be trying to express is that it is up to us to choose not the platform, but how we react emotionally to that experience?
Completely. You humans have so little concept of how to exist, what you can do, what you're capable of, how you do it. Like that, it baffles. It baffles us. Like it truly baffles us. Just how much you guys have hoodwinked yourselves in that regard. Just how much you guys have shut yourselves down. What's possible and what you guys are up to is, they're so far apart as to almost be not related.
And would you imply with that statement, are you implying that fear could be the reason in association with a possible veil of amnesia of sorts?
Amnesia.
Yes.
Sorry, you've asked me two questions here. You've asked me two questions.
Yes.
So how amnesia is a real thing for you guys. I really like that you brought that word up, because I'd had trouble finding it for myself. Like, you humans have had to relearn and relearn and relearn and relearn how to play the game of 3D existence over and over again. As a culture, you've nailed it, you've figured it out and forgotten, nailed it and forgotten, and fully understood it and woken up the next day without it. Like, your culture has gone through a seesaw of different understandings of the reality around you, and a lot of them have been really quite helpful and useful. But the predominant philosophy that you guys are running right now is totally bunk, and amnesia is almost an ongoing condition for you humans. Having to relearn these things over and over again Um, our heart goes out to you, but this is part of what you've chosen. As for fear, I will comment on fear. That's another self-imposed limitation that you have created.
Thank you. I now have 3 questions out of that, which as
Naturally.
you would arise from a human brain. The human nature within me what chooses to ask, as many ask me. And when I step into my higher self aspect, I don't ask these questions, but my human aspect wants to know, why do we keep choosing this? This is my primary question. If amnesia is a condition and we've already learned it, why do we keep choosing it?
In one word, novelty. As eternal beings, novelty is in great demand. It's a very sought after condition, a very sought after experience. And what better way to create novelty, to create originality in experience, than to wake up every time, every day with amnesia? How no better way to guarantee novelty in your experience.
Does our fear keep us in that amnesia state?
No. No, fear is just another variable condition of existence here.
So the phrase, what you resist persists, often has been something that humans will state, that the laws of this universe involve duality. Therefore, if you resist something, you become afraid of it. And then if you are afraid of it, then it persists further. Would you agree or disagree?
Everything in your experience, in your system, its strength comes from the amount of emotional energy you've put into it. So let's imagine a member of your family annoys you. And the more emotional energy you put into being annoyed is the more annoying you will find that person. And it has nothing to do whether they whistle too loud or they sing in the shower or they snore or any of that. It's absolutely an abstract thing. But how much you think about it and how much effort you put into being annoyed is like constructing a set of binoculars or a set of glasses that paints everything as annoying. Everything that person does is annoying. So the more you can create, if you want to be annoyed, if you want to resist and create fear around, or avoidance of being near that person in case they annoy you, then that's totally within your capacity to create it. Like, it's totally all up to you how you respond to it.
Got it. Thank you.
Is that clear? Is that clear?
Kind of. So then it's not just what you resist persists, it's more of what you create persists. Would you say that?
Yes. And actually the word I think I'm thinking of here is friction. If you want to create friction, you can create as much friction as you want. It's totally up to you. If you want it to be a smooth, easy ride, then you can create that too.
Got it. I'm going to geek out for a moment because in the land of science, as you know, I channel many scientific beings, and the way that Nikola Tesla has described it to me is that when there's friction, you know how sometimes when you rub your hands together, you get that spark of something? Friction has its own unique energy as well. Would you say that that resistance can create from that divine spark, just like anything else, that friction in any capacity when you're rubbing against something creates something else?
Well, that's a good question. And both beings involved in friction relish the contact. Absolutely relish it. Because with this, and I will get geeky and sciencey too, there is a unique, absolutely unique equation of emotions. Why I'm annoyed and how this other person responds to that, it creates two variables that smash into each other. And when they do that, that friction, it creates a really unique experience, a really one of a kind emotional and mathematical outcome, shall we say. The code that we create, the totally original feeling that both people experience, you know, whether that annoyance is accepted or denied, whether part of it is accepted and part of it is denied, and the ongoing struggle, the ongoing emotional arm wrestle, the ongoing subconscious conversation continues. And in that, the outcome is something original, and it's more of that novelty that we're seeking.
Would you define this as the word that humans are using, alchemy?
I can see how yes, that could be a word for it, yeah.
The combinations of two things to create a different frequency.
Yeah. I'm fourth dimensional alchemy. That's what we're looking at. Like 3D alchemy, yeah. But 4D alchemy, like the emotional, it's a totally new construct. And we regard everything original as pure gold. And that's what we're seeking out.
If you could even define the word original, if we have amnesia, we believe that everything is original, would we not?
Here's something for you, Pamela. Outside, there is in a non-dual world, it is impossible to experience hatred or anger or despair or hopelessness. And it's what you humans come here to experience. This is the, just as you go to the Bahamas to go to the beach, which you don't have at home, the eternal beings that you are come to this reality to experience things they can't do at home, like despair and hopelessness or anger or jealousy, or all of these things are just not viable where we're from.
Got it.
So when we mix and play with these emotional states and these concepts, then we actually, what's the word I'm looking for? It's inevitable that we create something new.
Would you say at that point then something new is birthed?
Yes. And these ideas, these constructs, these concepts, these are what we exist from. Like, sorry, not we, but perhaps what you humans all exist from, what you eternal beings exist from. And so by doing this, you're expanding exactly what you are.
I was going to ask that next. Do we do that when we are in other dimensional places, which and this is me making an assumption that we are multidimensional beings based upon the work that I've studied so far. Would you?
That's true.
That's true. Okay. If
That's
that is
true.
good, thank you. If that is true, would you say that while we are simultaneously existing ourselves in a higher dimensional place, if you will, would we then not have a concept of how bad, so to speak, and this is how a human would define it, this suffering, these negative emotions could actually be? Or perhaps because we are bored light beings, we just say we want to go have that vacation of despair and suffering and alchemy and however, so that we can expand further. Is that need for expansion, even in a different frequency and a higher relation, so vast that we choose it anyway with a knowingness that is going to be pretty terrible?
Yes and no. You humans are aware that when you project, that's how I want to say it. When you project into this reality, the concept of it's quite abstract to you. It's quite distant. It's quite removed from you. So the concept of enjoyable or not, or pleasant or not, is really way down the list of priorities. Like, it's whether you enjoy the suffering that we're setting up, whether you enjoy it or not, is really like very, very low in the list of considerations made when the choice is made to project into this reality, into 3D.
Thank you.
Does that help?
It does a little bit. Of course, it adds further question. That's quite enjoyable. So we don't care if we're going to enjoy it or not, and that's not an aspect in our consideration at all?
More or less, yeah. Yeah, that's I'd say fairly true, that statement.
So our need for novelty, as you call it, could that be in relation to our need for expansion, and we choose to expand because of that novelty that we are going to...
The novelty is the method through which you're expanding.
Do we know this in advance? If you could even choose that word.
So at the time of incarnation, are we aware of the output of novelty as it occurs? Yes. And when we elect to, when humans elect to incarnate, are they aware of the result as they make that choice? Is that the question that you're asking?
Are they aware of many things? Are they aware that novelty is the method of expansion, that this is the reason? That's my first question.
Oh, you humans don't know that. You've forgotten that. It's you're not aware that novelty is the name of the game.
Okay.
Like basically, yeah, like the 99% of humans walking around, that's not what they're chasing. They don't understand that aspect of why they incarnate.
Even at the higher self level, we don't understand that novelty is a part of that when we choose upon incarnation?
Higher self 5D, yes, they're aware.
Okay. Can you expand upon the word novelty? What does that, I don't really understand. Are you saying, because to me, I am implying the word novelty as an egoic expression, and I perhaps am misunderstanding.
So, Pamela, I want you to imagine that you are 100,000 years old. or in your case, 100,000 years will do just fine. Imagine that you're 100,000 years old. What is there left to do? Where is there left to go? What is there left to experience?
Oh,
If you were 100,000 years old, you would have, on Earth, you would have seen dozens of cultures rise and fall. You would have seen human beings at their absolute best and their absolute worst. You would have seen beauty and hideousness and deformity and incredible art, and you would have seen incredible creations and horrifying destructions, all of this time. But as an individual, I imagine you would be absolutely bored out of your brain. You'd be dying for some human to say something new. And thus we set up at a dimension in which novelty is the currency. This is what you're here for, to do something totally original. And by having variables like me and variables like fear and variables like duality, like you're really stirring the pot, and amnesia, you're really stirring the pot on yourselves. Like you're really, you're really throwing yourself in the deep end.
And people come to me, I'm in my position quite often to ask the question, why? And to me, that question isn't relevant because I've often said, because you're bored light beings, and you need a new need, and you require a new method of expansion because you can. Is that what you're saying? Yes?
Yes. Yeah. The shortest answer is yes. Yeah. But yes, with a caveat. Yes. That's what you humans are doing.
Can you expand upon the caveat, please?
A caveat with a little reservation, like it's like 90-something% true what you're saying. As bored eternal light beings, you've created a simulation with more ridiculousness and craziness than I think you really bargained for. I think when you were designing this reality, you didn't plan for it to be this messy. I really don't think you did. Does that make sense?
It does, and it breeds more questions.
Yay!
I'm a curious being.
We like that.
I do. I enjoy it very much. I would like to ask you about the concept of separation. And many people ask me, as I have attempted to explain in my work, that because of this amnesia, that we have forgotten that we are source, that we are a projection of sorts of source. Number one, would you agree with that?
Yes, that was your intention. Absolutely.
We intended to forget that we are source and then to remember our divinity?
Remembering your divinity, as you say it, I'm not sure. Remembering that you are a lot more than your 3D self is something you are welcome to do in your world. If you wake up to the fact that you're in a simulation, then you can manipulate the simulation to your liking, or exit the simulation as you choose. You call that process ascension. It's your total choice, though there is nowhere is it carved in stone that you need to recover your divinity or return to your divinity. It's not an immutable fact that that's your purpose or even plan here. For some of you, you've set yourself this challenge, though it's far from universal. I would suggest that 90% of you humans are not necessarily interested in returning to divinity as you describe it.
That's a staggering, whopping figure. 90% of us are not interested in returning to that remembrance. Why would we not be?
That can change, because you elected to come here. I'm going to keep saying the Bahamas, even though I know it's a bad analogy.
Truly.
Yeah. You didn't come to the Bahamas to figure out how to get home. Is that you can, if you're over being in the Bahamas, if you've had too much sunshine and like too many pina coladas, or too much novelty, I should say, then you can definitely elect to chase down the airport and fly back, and all of the things that entails in spiritual terms. Though I don't think that that's what most of you are here for.
Can you expand upon what most of us are here for?
The drama, the staggering, the mayhem that is being a human, the absolute shenanigans, like the stuff that happens in here, you would never even read about in higher dimensions. Like it's just not, like it's not even conceivable.
There is a theory floating around our spiritual communities here on Earth that the Earth is a matrix and we are stuck and we need to break free. What is your opinion of that?
Yes, we're in a matrix. This beautiful thing of karma is linking you all together, so much so that you are tying each other down into the matrix. So you know, the repeated, if you have like multiple past lives with a past life partner and you murder each other over and over again, the amount of the strength of the linkage, and I'm talking about the novelty where they're in, like how many times you can repeat that experience and how many different ways you can stab each other in the back, or however that story may go, is what you originally intended when you came here. So this is being built upon and built upon and built upon over and over again, and unlinking yourself from that in order to get is one of the things you're going to need to do if you're going to exit this matrix. But one of the things that because it's a matrix, when you realize you're in a matrix, then you can learn the programming language or you can learn to reprogram things through prayer and prayer and meditation. Are you going back in not as the user, but as the administrator of your reality? If we're going to keep working with computers in the matrix as an analogy. And again, you can create more novelty from that. Totally.
There are many theories that karma is a punishment, and that if we were to use your example, say we murdered someone and then they murdered us and we continued that chain, if that were the link, that would be something based upon a negative frequency that we would require, that is required for us to come back and fix it or be punished by it, and that this is what karma does. Would you agree?
Okay. Punishment implies judgment from a higher source, from a higher power, what's the word I'm looking for? Punishment implies that somebody decided that's not good, and therefore you must pay, and therefore there is a punishment. But the rules here that doesn't apply.
Because source doesn't judge.
Well, no. The source doesn't really, like your source beings, your extensions of source, but the singularity doesn't even present itself here in, definitely not in 3D. This place is way too messy for it. Yeah, there is, it's sort of much more abstract than that. Like, I know you humans have like a really deep investment in good and bad and good and evil, and these concepts aren't really in what we do. We don't really adhere to those ideas. And so if we go back, I'm really being quite facetious in saying that karmic situation of killing and counter-killing over and over again is constructed exactly the same way as being annoyed by somebody and then them being nasty to you and then you being nasty to them, and that kill and counter-kill and annoy and nasty going back and back and back. It's just a choice that you two are making in the hope of creating further novelty. It doesn't.
Got it.
And so by contracting and agreeing to deepen the dance that you two are engaged in, at moments, one or the other is not going to enjoy having their foot stepped on during the dance.
Yes.
And that's where revenge and punishment come in. That's where judgment comes in. That's where unfairness plays its part. Because due to amnesia, you forget that you planned to have your foot stepped on as part of this dance. Does that answer your question, Pamela?
Yes, but it also implies, at least from the way that I am inferring, that we are the beings who are creating that punishment. That is our choice to perceive punishment.
Like I said before, you humans have no concept of what you're capable of creating here. And it baffles us regularly, some of the things that you create. And punishment is one of those, woo, what are you guys up to? What on earth are you kids doing down there?
Back to the theory of us being multidimensional beings from many places, if you will, as stated. Would you define those beings as what humans are? What is your definition of what we are defining ourselves as? Many people say that we are fractals of extraterrestrial beings.
Oh, mixing blood and mixing DNA has been something that's been going on, well, it's older than the hills. Like, one of the places that novelty is stored is, sorry, not novelty, how do I'm going to use a different word. One of the places that dispositions are stored. So as you experience more and intricate and deeper and broader situations that you're creating in the 3D, it creates a disposition. And I will say, and I'll put I'll say the same thing using different words. A war veteran, like, absolutely nothing bothers them. All right, like these guys, you know, don't get scared. They don't get shaken. Like, you know, if they in a car accident, everybody else will be panicking, and the war veteran will just be standing around wondering why everybody's upset. And to create the disposition of calm in all situations, that individual had to go through several life-threatening battles and have their definition of safety totally rewritten, totally, the disposition of safety totally redefined, so that they can have this disposition. Dispositions are written in DNA. The coding language that they use is that they are formed in is in DNA. And so it's quite a valuable commodity to trade in and to beg, borrow, or steal, really, by other beings who show up on Earth. Did I make sense with that?
Yes, definitely.
So, okay.
Yes, thank you. You're implying that we as higher beings who come here for our various reasons, write our own DNA as we incarnate based upon perhaps our unique soul contracts, if you will, would be the human word?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Well, look, and I sense you, Pamela, understand that there are, you would have in your work come across genetic curses or genetic negative dispositions, a genetic emotional flaw that just gets repeated generation after generation. Are you familiar with this sort of thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I've forgotten your question.
Time likes to forget. That's cute. So basically, are you implying that we are writing the code and then we are changing it, and then upon every reincarnation, we are writing the code differently based upon what we've learned?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's that DNA code is part of the fruit. It's part of the product or output of incarnating in. It's not the only one. It's not the only coding language that you're chasing, but it's one of them.
Okay. This leads me to a further question, of course, about free will. Are we one of the few places who hold free will? Is Earth one of the few places that hold free will as a component?
Sorry, you break up there, honey. Is Earth one of the places that holds free will as what?
As a component, like is as a novelty?
Yeah. Free will's novelty is is contingent on free will. So if everybody knew how everybody was going to react before they did anything, then it wouldn't work. But like when you get into it, let's imagine that you're in the supermarket and somebody jumps in front of you in line, right? You have 10 dispositions and 10 attitudes to take towards that person. Be them as generous as, oh, well, obviously they're in a rush, to, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And like any of these, and there's 10 different, on that 10 different dispositions on that scale. And free will means you can choose any of those to create a new variable, to create, which act as a new variable to create a new novelty. And also by using free will, you are also able to apply a fresh disposition to an old situation. You can change how you're responding to things. Free will is critical to what you guys are doing. What's really interesting is that contract after contract after contract after agreement after agreement after agreement means that you limit the amount of free will you can apply.
That's interesting.
Per situation. Yeah, it's a messy side effect that I don't think you guys really thought through.
It could be an ethical side effect, at least from my perspective. If I am hearing you and understanding you properly, let's go back to the example of you murder someone over and over again. At a certain point in time, would a higher force than free will be involved that would step in and say, okay, your free will is now limited and you must perhaps stop murdering at this point?
Actually, the mechanism would be more like, even though you don't want to kill this person, because your pattern is so deeply embedded, it's going to happen anyway. All of your dispositions are directed towards murder, then you're stuck doing that.
Wow. And then
that's the thing you did think through.
And then your DNA code would change so much if you did that so many times. Would you gravitate more towards a non-sentient race upon your further incarnations? If you are recreating your genetic code.
It's a safety mechanism that you've employed here, yes.
Please expand upon safety mechanism.
Well, if you had a murderous so-and-so running around in your reality, creating relentless amounts of karma of this type, then the entire reality would descend into, and in karma terms, murderousness would be infectious. We might say it that way. And so in order to quarantine those beings who are particularly infectious, they use non-sentient being incarnation, yes.
And would that mean that in that being's reality, they would begin to create a murderous reality, and would they be reconstructing their DNA to align towards, and perhaps this question is
well, DNA is one of the codes, remember?
Uh-huh.
So the murderousness would be stored in code type A, but the DNA of, say, a dog would be entirely different. would be totally different. So they kind of get a fresh ticket. They kind of get a clean slate in that way. So one of the dispositions and codings is about would be murderous, and the other one would be totally animal and deeper in touch with nature than the human ever was.
Okay.
Like the sentient, there's a large portion of the sentience that transfers over to Gaia, so that Gaia is in management of that being, who has obviously become problematic for the rest, for everybody else who's playing down here.
And if Gaia is in management of that being, who's out of
Yes.
control in DNA coding, what then would occur?
Say again, sorry?
If Gaia is then responsible and in management of the being whose DNA coding has gone a bit awry, if you will, and who's harming any other...
Not DNA coding, other coding type A. The DNA coding from human to dog in this example is totally different. Like the DNA coding does not transfer. So they get a clean slate that way. And so, but because they sunk themselves so deep, because they kept making poor choices so many times, Gaia then, because animals have a deeper connection, we would understand it as a deeper connection to nature and instinct. But in fact, it's Gaia holding some of the directives, is feeding that being fresh information that we would call instinct on a constant basis. So although part of the makeup of the mind of that being is totally murderous, the other half is Gaia.
Okay.
And that's the mechanism of lower being incarnation.
Okay. That breeds so many questions that I don't even know which one to ask next.
Can I say, Pamela, how refreshing it is that one of you humans is getting it?
Please
like
repeat.
that.
The internet is terrible.
How refreshing it is that one of you humans is getting it.
I wouldn't make the implication that that human is I.
Ever humble, aren't you?
That's a requirement of my DNA, as you are aware. There is always more to learn. I understand where you're coming from, that many humans are, many humans are coming to me and saying, we don't feel that fear and suffering is actually a choice that we can manifest or avoid or choose differently. And my dilemma in a human incarnation is trying to express that suffering is indeed created, that suffering is indeed a choice, that suffering, while what you are saying is that suffering is a part of their programming as well, that is a choice upon incarnation. So I'm having a hard time explaining to people that you can indeed change the suffering, that you can indeed not choose the suffering, that you can indeed stop suffering. Can you please help?
I can hear Alistair's excitement in the back of my mind here. Like he's glad you asked that question. And so I'll put it this way. Every time, this is why Buddha and Jesus were like some of the most evolved humans that ever lived. And what they both did was they figured out the way out of suffering. So when you're in that loop of annoyance and nasty and anger and all these sort of things like this, right? And all of them cause suffering over and over again. Forgive everyone involved. Let go of the idea that you owe them anything and they owe you anything, because you're never going to collect. The only thing you're going to receive from that situation is more suffering. And it's because that's what the damn situation is for, so that you guys can create a novel thing called suffering. You give all of the people who've wronged you, you're freeing yourself from that. And Buddha went a step further, and he's quite a cheeky bugger for this, is when you're in suffering, say thank you. Find a way to be grateful. And it really short circuits, like the gratitude, short circuits the whole exchange. Because it's so lovely and giving, like it's not this, you owe me, no, I owe you sort of tug of war between that nastiness requires, you know, like nastiness is a zero-sum game, and like forgiveness is just to stop playing. And gratitude is to just go, you want me to give you something good? Okay, here, take all this. I'm really happy that you got it. You know, like it's it really short circuits the computation of that karma. And so if you choose, those options are open to you. It's just a choice.
Right.
And I know that if you at one moment decide to forgive or add gratitude to the situation, then it's hard. It's just not easy. Right? Because you'll have 50 softwares or 50 ideas or 50 dispositions that point you in the direction of being angry. To have one pushing the other way, it's going to be a small voice. It's going to be a small voice in a loud crowd to forgive. Your requirement is to choose forgiveness over and over and over and over again. And I want to remind you that your suffering is in part you choosing anger over and over and over again. To choose nastiness, to choose spite or jealousy or whatever it is that's the content of that story. But little by little, if you choose something different, you will get a different outcome. If you want to be angry, then you can maintain that anger and build on that anger. And you do that by staying angry. If you don't want to be angry anymore, then you choose forgiveness or gratitude or something like that. And by re-choosing, and then because in the first, that small voice in a loud crowd won't get a big result to begin with. So you have to choose it again and again and again. And you have to choose it enough times to counterbalance 1,000 choices of anger, because that's how you got into a state of serious suffering.
Yes. I see.
Does that work for you? Is that good? Do you like that?
Yes, very much. That makes a lot more sense to my human logical brain. Thank you. So please tell that to your clients, because I know that what we've been talking about so far hasn't been entirely in line with most of the philosophy or most of the understanding of what's been going on, of what's happening here on Earth. And
free will is the foundation stone of this place.
Yes.
It's one of the facts that this reality is based on. And so if you're in suffering, use your free will and choose something else. That's and I'm sure you've heard it in a dozen other forms, but here it is one more time, and I'm hoping that some more of you humans can grab it.
Thank you. I learned this from animals, what you're saying. I learned from the animal kingdom when I was on top of a mountain meditating and in a clear state and came across a wild animal. Well, and it came across I should say.
Cool. Yeah, okay.
Right. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you this because you can dig into my memory, but I would like to share it with people who are listening. In that moment, there was a slight primitive nature that said this animal could possibly charge me, eat me, kill me, etc. And then in my higher self aspect, the higher self decided to take over and say, well, what if it's okay that you don't know is going to happen? What if it's okay that you formulate an acceptance that anything could happen? And what I felt, I felt something interesting occur between myself and the animal that felt as if the primitive nature of the hypothalamus gland in the brain completely halted and did not go into fight or fright. It just halted. And I locked eyes with this animal, and then it was just sort of a show of respect, and then it walked away slowly, very slowly, with neither of us fearing or feeling anything in particular. There was no feeling state. Can you please comment?
No, like it's perfectly, it's a perfect contextualization for choice. And when you say fight or flight, if you are not feeding into an aggressive situation, then it doesn't have it's kind of like its aggression doesn't stick. If in the wild, if you have not an ounce of aggression or not, if you are choosing anything other than violence, as your higher self said, no, don't go into fight or flight. Just know that anything could happen. And when you chose that something else was going to happen, that's exactly what happened. It didn't have, even if the animal was incredibly hungry, for the interaction to work, it required you to be afraid. It required an agreement from you that you could be eaten. And your higher self said, nope, that's not happening. And that's exactly what played out. And what a beautiful experience for you. And like the concept that you would, for you to become dinner, you have to accept that you have to choose to be dinner at some kind of level. And since you chose something else, since you used your free will to elect a different outcome, that's exactly what happened. And I'll just bring a story from Alistair here. Like he's talking about Gandhi. One of the things that Gandhi did that's not really well known is he would meditate for a couple of hours in preparation, and then he would lower himself or be lowered into a pit with hundreds and hundreds of poisonous snakes in it. And he would sit there and meditate anything other than being bitten. And it's quite challenging to make a choice when everything you've learned is the opposite of that choice. But Gandhi never got bitten by a snake. He did this for many times to prove the point that just how strong your choice is, just how limitless your choice is. And I'm hoping that in this interaction, that one of the themes that you pick up is that your choice is only limited by your imagination. Everything is possible, everything. You humans created this place as a playground to create something totally original. And so use your imagination and do that. That sounds like a heaps better idea.
What a novel idea.
Wow. You know, like, aren't we creating novelty right now?
I'm happy to hear that time has a sense of humor.
Yes. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I like you. Thanks for visiting.
Indeed.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later, says time.
Thank you, Alistair, and thank you to all who are watching. We're going to give Alistair a chance to tell us, thank you for coming back into your human self. Can you please tell us how to reach you? The Alistair self.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I have I have a website. It's my name, alistairlarmour.com, alistairlarmour.com. Yeah, one of the things I do a lot for people is talk to their soul so that they know what their soul is thinking. Yeah. And I do quite a lot of that, so by all means get in touch with me if you like this sort of channeling.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And I'm Pamela Aaralyn, and you can find me at aurareader.com.
A big thank you to you, lovely.
Oh, yes, no problem. It's my honor. But yeah, that was a very interesting experience. You might want to go rest from that now.
Look, there were quite a few surprises in that for me. I'm so glad that you asked the right questions. Like, otherwise, you know, they're not saying the right. They're not telling us this these amazing ideas. Not hearing this stuff any other way. Yeah. So, look, thank you for being here, Pamela. You rock.
Thank you so much, and I'm going to. Right. Thank you for everyone who's watching.